All right, welcome back to the channel, everyone. So today we have a few things to discuss. First being what's next for Kamaru Usman and Joaquin Buckley. Now I know I touched on it in my recent video. However, I want to get into more in depth about it on this one. And starting off, let's talk about Usman, mate. So Kamaru Usman, he's currently ranked number 5 and he just beat number 7 Joaquin Buckley. Now I don't think his ranking is going to move upwards that much considering he was fighting down. However, definitely having him back in the win column is a good thing. But before this fight, and after the fight, he's been calling for the next title shot. And there's a lot of debate in the comment sections and everything saying that, well, he is only 1-3 in his last 4. And I get there's context to those 3 losses. However, I feel like the UFC could easily pull some sort of negotiation tactic being like, well, I know you just won, but you are technically 1-3 in your last 4, so I don't know if we can give you the next title shot right away. And I feel like Usman, he's always famous for no-selling his next opponents or people who want to fight him. He's like, ho? Because the post-fight press conference, and even beforehand, they were asking him about fighting Belal. When are you going to fight Belal? Are you going to fight Belal before you get the next title shot? Blah, blah, blah. And Usman, in a previous, I believe it was a podcast or something, where he was like, there's no more interest for me fighting Belal because he doesn't have the belt. I get there's history or whatever, but I don't care to fight him. I'm hunting the belt, not Belal. And it kind of makes sense. However, at the same time, I do disagree because I feel like if you look at the top 5, Belal is probably the least risky kind of matchup because he's not going to knock out Usman. If anything, he'll smother him and take him down over and over and over again, right? But that's unlikely because if you look at Usman, he looks in vintage form. Obviously, he's not as fast as he once was, and he was getting hit with shots that probably normally he wouldn't. But I feel like Belal, like I said, is the safest kind of matchup. Not only that, they have the history, and I know Usman doesn't want to drop that podcast or whatever, but you could easily drop that podcast because for JDM and Makhachev, when they fight, it's probably going to be anywhere between October and December. And let's say Makhachev fights in December. I believe he has a holiday earlier on in the next year. So people were saying that if anything, he'll be able to return after May. And Usman, I do not think that Usman should wait around. Because if they book Sean Brady versus Ian Gary, and let's say Ian Gary beats Sean Brady, they could be like, well, Ian Gary's on a 2-fight win streak, and he beat number 2 in the world, Sean Brady. Which I don't know if they would pull that kind of thing, because I believe the company still likes Usman. However, like I said, Usman should stay busy, rack up as much wins as he can before he has to retire, because, he does not have long left. Bilal's getting older as well, and Belal just took a bunch of damage, so I feel like Usman, especially with his power, he definitely could get Belal out of there. And if you book that fight on the same card with JDM and Makhachev, it'd be a no-brainer, and then it would be an easy sell for them to get the next title shot. Maybe not Belal, because I know they do not like Belal behind the scenes. However, for Usman, it could easily be like, you know what, I'm showing up, I'm again a company man, give me that next title shot because I'm here, I'm on this card, I'm going to build up the hype. Usman can start talking shit to Makhachev and JDM and be like, I'm the real champion. Whenever I come up and I whoop Belal, then I'm going to get you guys. So, no-brainer. And, Usman, like I said, obviously he could sit out, but I just don't think it would be a wise decision. Especially, get him more comfortable with being in there because I do not think that either Makhachev or JDM will be an easy fight for him. So, just another kind of preparation and just to keep him sharp. I would say that matchup's the purpose for that. And then, you can just build up a bunch of hype as well. Moving on, Joaquin Buckley. Now, Joaquin Buckley recently encountered, or at least gained, a new hater in Mr. Israel Adesanya. When he was when Israel was watching Joaquin Buckley walk out on his reaction video, he always makes those reaction videos. He's like, I fucking hate this guy, dude. I fucking hate him, bro. I don't even use this word hate lightly. But something about him just fucking annoys me. It's like, what? I get you rooting for your guy in Usman, but I just don't understand the intensity behind the hatred for Buckley. I don't think Buckley's ever done anything to Adesanya, so it's really strange to watch. And then Israel's like, hey man, you gotta do this. He sounds like he's fucking rapping when he's talking to me, so I just walked away. It's like, Buckley's just such a funny guy, and it's hard to imagine someone having this much animosity for someone, especially since he hasn't even fought him, and they're not even in the same weight class anymore. And then Joaquin Buckley responds on Twitter saying, hate the farmer that took your belt, not me. stand on business about Africa or China or whatever the fuck you from, bitch. Laughing emoji. So it's like, Buckley's definitely Buckley, stand in your fucking base, yeah? And then someone in the comments was like, move up and fight him then. And then Buckley's like, not a bad idea. Which, as much as that would be a very funny build-up, I just can't imagine they're doing that anytime soon. It just doesn't make sense whatsoever, because Adesanya's ranked number 4 in middleweight. I think the UFC's already made it clear that they do not want Joaquin Buckley in middleweight again because he's just too small. Like, look at Gastelum, right? Gastelum, I guarantee you if he had a proper training camp and everything, he would do a lot better in 170. It's just the weight cut and everything is just too much of a nightmare for him, I guess. But whereas Joaquin Buckley, he figured it out. He's definitely has a decent amount of strength. Obviously, he was kind of out-muscled in the Usman fight, but as far as everyone else, Joaquin Buckley showed that he can hang with the top 5. But yeah, I feel like I said, they don't want Joaquin Buckley in middleweight, so this fight probably won't happen. And I feel like Israel Adesanya definitely wouldn't have anything to gain if he beat Buckley, aside from personal vendetta, but that's not enough for the UFC to book anything like that. Whereas Joaquin Buckley, a lot more realistic expectation for Buckley's next matchup. Now, this all depends on how they're still feeling about Joaquin Buckley, because especially whenever a fighter is coming off a loss, their next matchup will show where the UFC is at with them, because let's say, for example, they give Joaquin Buckley Michael Morales or something. It'll say that the UFC doesn't hate Buckley, but they're like, okay, let's try to make something like a name off of Buckley. Whereas let's say they give Buckley a Gilbert Burns or maybe a Jeff Neal or something. They're a lot more like, okay, let's kind of rebuild Buckley. So it really all depends on where the UFC thinks they're at, because I know he has history with Ian Gary, but Ian Gary's not going to want to fight downwards because he's ahead of Buckley at this point. I feel like the most realistic call out for Buckley should probably be, like I said, he got beaten by number 5, so he shouldn't have to go that far down the rankings, but he already beat Covington. Gilbert Burns is a possible matchup just to get him back on his feet, if the UFC wants to. Jeff Neal would be a tough one, but I feel like Joaquin Buckley would get that done. He already beat Stephen Thompson. Carlos Prates would be a really good one as well, but like I said, we're getting at like 13 years, so I just don't think Joaquin Buckley would want to go that far down. And also, there's also the rumors about Michael Morales fighting Leon Edwards. So I don't know if Michael Morales will want to fight Joaquin Buckley because, he can go a lot higher. And I feel like it would be a better matchup against, or it would be easier for Michael Morales to beat Leon Edwards than it would Joaquin Buckley. And I feel like Joaquin Buckley definitely needs to work on his takedown defense, obviously. So I doubt they're going to give him some sort of wrestler. I get Gilbert Burns does have wrestling and grappling, but he's not as good as he once was. So I feel like definitely you can do a Gilbert Burns and then a Jeff Neal fight if they want to show Buckley in a big striking matchup, and then Joaquin Buckley will probably be able to get a highlight reel off of that, definitely like maybe a finish. And and then get Joaquin Buckley back on his feet, and then once he figures out his wrestling as he keeps going on, then you can give him an elite grappler. But until then, I would like to see Joaquin Buckley return against primarily a striker in Jeff Neal or Gilbert Burns. Like I said, I get he grapples, but he's not as good as he once was. And I feel like Joaquin Buckley, if he can get through Gilbert Burns, it'll give him a lot more confidence than maybe a striking matchup, just to be like, nah, I told you guys I still have grappling. Like, I've patched these holes. So, like I said, it's up to them. But moving on. Now we got Arman Tsarukyan. So he was in his Instagram comment section where this guy comments, next who Arman, and he adds Arman and then a bunch of question marks. And then Arman Tsarukyan says, I'm the backup for UFC317. Now, I really, really like to hear this because everyone knows that the UFC has a personal vendetta against Arman Tsarukyan for, first of all, pulling out of the Makhachev fight. Then I'm assuming they're pissed off at him because of he rejected the Mateusz Gamrot fight. So to see this is really good news. And especially, I feel like he's trying to be more of a company man and trying to be like, okay, I get I'm not in the great, or the nice list on the UFC. However, if I pull my weight, I be a company man, do this kind of thing, like show up for backup opponent, because then the UFC doesn't really have to struggle to find one. And this is a huge fight, so they definitely do need a backup. So it's good for Arman Tsarukyan. Although I would like to have him, or I would prefer to him have a fight on this card, and then let's say one of them pulls out, he can just move up. Like Arman Tsarukyan wanted Gaethje on this card, but Gaethje obviously is playing hard to get right now, and he doesn't really want to fight aside from the title, but that's another story altogether. Now, I feel like Arman Tsarukyan, let's say he doesn't fight anyone in this card, which I know it is possible for Oliveira to pull out. I highly doubt that Topuria pulls out. But then if Arman steps in, that would be the matchup that I've always been asking for, Ilia Topuria versus Arman. If we can't get Makhachev, it's the next best thing. And Arman, to me, always deserved this fight over Charles Oliveira because he beat him and he's on a winning streak. Whereas Charles Oliveira, you know, he already lost to Makhachev, and you know, like I said, he lost to Arman. So to me, there's not much appetite to see him in the championship fights until he gets at least another elite level win. Because the same thing, I don't trust Oliveira's chin anymore. So this matchup is just a complete nightmare. Now, a lot of people in the comment section were saying like, okay, so who's going to be the backup for Arman? And I'm like, man, like, everyone's got to chill out. Arman, he's not a pull-out merchant by any means. I get it was a really bad look for him to pull out, especially because everyone's like, oh, you just pull your back and trying to impress Nina Drama, which I don't think was the case. And not only that, you guys got to realize that Arman Tsarukyan, he already lost to Makhachev. So if he went into that camp or the fight injured, he would be 0-2 against Makhachev and probably never get another title shot unless Makhachev moves up, which obviously in hindsight, Makhachev did end up moving up, so it is what it is. But yeah, I just hope the UFC is happy with Arman, and I hope they give him, for at least doing this favor for them, hopefully he gets like maybe a Paddy Pimblett, a Dan Hooker, someone around the top 5. I don't think that the number 1 contender in Arman Tsarukyan should have to fight again before the title shot, but obviously the UFC is going to make him, so I feel like if they won't give him the next one, at least give him a top 5, a good matchup to get a good name and get a highlight reel, KO, or submission or something to get his promotion going, because Arman Tsarukyan, he's not very energetic in his interviews, so he's not going to build up hype like this. He's going to have to get these epic wars, epic finishes, and that's how he's going to regain his reputation with the fans. But yeah, that's all I got for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.